Hey, how's everyone doing? I'm coming on really late today. So my second live video of the day. The first one was about Courtney Love and Taylor Swift and Madonna and Lana Del Rey. And now let's get to the good stuff. We're going to talk about and talk with Malcolm Bruce, who is Jack Bruce's son. Like Jack Bruce was the famous vocalist and bass player for one of the greatest bands of all time, one of the most influential bands of all time, Cream. And we lost Jack. He was 71 years old, died in 2014. But there's a brand new record before we get going called Heavenly Cream, which features Joe Bonamassa. It features Ginger Baker. He got a chance to do Ginger, to talk to Ginger, get Ginger on the project before Ginger died. And Ginger died in 2019. He was 80 years old. This is rock history music, a lot of history on Cream, talking to Jack Bruce's son, Malcolm, and we talk about a lot of Ginger Baker in this one on rock history music. It's John Bowden, and when you talk about Cream, it's kind of hard to talk about this band and not sort of give them, and not sort of do this, because Cream influenced everybody, whether you like it or not. Let me just get my comments up so I can. Oh, Shannon's so cute. She always says good luck before I. Hold on. Tap to retry. Let me just get on here. Make sure I'm on. I really think you can get me to like. There you go. That's our commercial. When you have Cream, when you're talking about a drummer, I was just talking to Stuart Copeland of The Police maybe a few months ago, and I knew he was a huge Ginger Baker fan. And I said, is it Ginger Baker? He says, there's no one else. You can put all these other people on there. But he says, as far as doing that at his time, and remember, Cream were only together for like less than 2.5 years. And we're going to send you the, let me just put this down, because whenever people say, hey, Neutral 69, hi, John. Hey, how you doing? But Stuart Copeland, I should have put this clip in here, and we're going to do a whole thing on Cream later on, because we're going to go back into the history of rock and roll with videos on Rock History Book, or our sister channel, and really try to remind everyone where it came from. That juice that gave us the music in the 60s. But if you grew up in the 70s, what influenced your guys in the 70s? If you grew up in the 70s, all your heroes were at least 10 years older than you. Who were they listening to? Well, of course, a lot of them were listening to Cream. When I was talking to Mark Farner of Grand Funk, Mark says, hey, man, give me that Cream. Give me that fresh Cream. That's what he kept saying. And, of course, he went on to create his own trio with Grand Funk, right? I mean, they were a quartet for a while, but they were well known for being a trio. There's so many great trios in rock and roll. We've got Triumph. We've got Jimi Hendrix Experience. I mean, it goes on and on as far as trios. Rush, that made a big difference. But we will let me just. Did he die? Oh, Neutral 60 did. No, Ginger Baker's been dead for a while. So Ginger Baker's been dead since 2019. He was 80 years old. Jack Bruce died at 71 in 2014. So Eric Clapton's still alive. The three guys that basically made up Cream. But before we go on, I'm going to play you a little clip on the history of Cream before we talk to Malcolm Bruce, who is the son of bassist and vocalist Jack Bruce of Cream, before we get into that, because he gives me interesting quotes on Ginger Baker, who he worked with and knew his whole life, because Ginger played with his dad, Jack Bruce, in Cream, but also was in his orbit. So before Ginger Baker died, Malcolm Bruce got Ginger to perform on this brand new album called Heavenly Cream. There are links, by the way, in the description where you want to pick it up. Joe Bonamassa is on it, and a little history on Cream. Cream, the British band, was formed in 1966, featuring Eric Clapton, Jack Bruce, and Ginger Baker. Each member were already highly regarded musicians at the time. Clapton had already gained fame in the Yardbirds and John Mayall in the Blues Breakers, while Bruce and Baker had played together in the Blues Incorporated and the Graham Bond Organization. This trio quickly gained attention for their innovative fusion in blues, rock, and psychedelic music. And interestingly, Cream were only together for approximately 2 years and 4 months. They formed in July 1966 and disbanded in November 1968. Now, despite that short relationship, that short tenure, Cream left a lasting impact on the rock music landscape. Their virtuosity and ability to improvise set them apart in what was a real burgeoning rock scene in the late 60s. Their live performances were legendary, with extended jams and that electrifying energy. In 1966, Cream released their debut album, Fresh Cream, featuring their classic I Feel Free and Spoonful. The album showcased the band's raw talent and really laid the foundation for their future success. Next came Disraeli Gears in 1967. It included the hits Strange Brew and Sunshine of Your Love. The album had that iconic psychedelic artwork and a real blues-infused rock sound, which solidified Cream's status as a pioneer in that genre. Then came Cream's third album, Wheels of Fire, released in 1968. It became the world's first platinum-selling double album, and it featured both studio recordings and live tracks, including the iconic White Room and Crossroads. And to no one's surprise, it really showcased the band's versatility and cemented their place in rock history. Despite Cream's commercial success, tensions between band members began to escalate due to personal and musical differences. There was Clapton's desire to explore a more straightforward blues style, and that kind of clashed with Bruce and Baker's experimental tendencies. In 1968, Cream announced their breakup after completing a farewell tour. Following the band's demise, each member pursued successful solo careers. Clapton went on to become one of the most influential guitarists in rock history. There were a lot of acclaimed albums in his future, and he collaborated with a lot of legends. Bruce released several solo albums, collaborated with artists across different genres, and showcased his talent as a singer-songwriter and a multi-instrumentalist. Baker formed the band Blind Faith along with Clapton and Steve Winwood before he embarked on his own solo career. Despite Cream's relatively short-lived tenure, their impact on rock music cannot be overstated. They had this innovative approach to blending blues, rock, psychedelics that opened doors for a lot of future musicians. In 1993, Cream reunited for a series of concerts at London's Royal Albert Hall, again demonstrating their musical chemistry and that influence that was still as important to so many players just trying to make it and make a difference. That reunion reignited a lot of interest in that band. And Cream were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1993. A brief time together, but their legacy, well, it says they were one of the greatest rock bands of all time. Cream pioneered that fusion between blues and rock, blending traditional blues elements with that power energy of rock. That's the stuff that laid the groundwork for the Jimi Hendrix Experience and the Allman Brothers Band. Then there was that instrumental virtuosity. Each member of the band were highly skilled. Eric Clapton's guitar playing, Jack Bruce's bass work, and Ginger Baker's drumming, he's always mentioned as one of the most influential drummers of all time. There were those extreme jams from Cream. Every live show had these extended improvisational jams, easily stretching out these studio versions into these monumental pieces in concert. This is the kind of stuff that influenced bands like the Grateful Dead and Phish. Cream opened the door for album-oriented rock. Their album, especially Disraeli Gears and Wheels of Fire, really helped to polarize that concept of an album as a cohesive artistic statement, rather than just a collection of singles. Cream had this psychedelic aesthetic. Their music, the album's artwork, embraced that kind of psychedelic lifestyle of the late 60s that we saw with Pink Floyd and Jefferson Airplane. It was all this psychedelic imagery and themes. Cream's impact on rock and roll is undeniable. And our special guest tonight is an interview I did not that long ago with Malcolm Bruce, who is the son of Jack Bruce, who died in 2014. He was 71 years old. Ginger Baker died at 80. Now, that was a surprise for a lot of people because I think a lot of folks, because Ginger started, it seemed like losing himself. He was always a sort of a cantankerous guy. If you've ever seen the documentary on Ginger Baker, Ginger actually attacked the guy who was doing the documentary on him. and he didn't suffer fools. And we're going to talk about that in a second. But first, we're going to talk with Malcolm Bruce about the new album, which features Joe Bonamassa. Uh, also, Ginger Baker's on the album because he managed to get Ginger Baker before he died. And we're going to talk specifically on Ginger Baker in a second. We'll have Malcolm Bruce back on tomorrow night. We'll have more from that interview. Heavenly Cream is the name of this album. He's also touring this whole thing this year. But first, Malcolm Bruce talking about getting Joe Bonamassa, and putting this whole project together. Sunshine of Your Love, for instance, with Joe and Ginger. Like, when did Ginger, was that tracks that he had? Did you get him to do it before he died? How did that work?
Yeah. No, we well, Bernie Marsden was basically friends with Joe. They knew each other, and they had a friendship. And I think because Bernie was also, for anyone who doesn't know, Bernie Marsden, guitarist, songwriter in Whitesnake. But Bernie had this kind of amazing guitar collection, including the famous Paul Kossoff Les Paul. Paul Kossoff from Free had this Les Paul that's called the Beast. I think it's like the sort of touted as the great Les Paul of all time or whatever. So Bernie even kind of released this glossy book with all his guitar collection in it, and obviously Joe Bonamassa is like a huge guitar collector as well. So I think they bonded over their guitars, and so it was really because Bernie was friends with Rob Cass, the producer, and I'd met him when he actually guested on my dad's final record, Silver Rails. It was also done at Abbey Road in 2013. And then Bernie came to a tribute that I put on in London for my dad. He came and played at that concert, and so we brought Bernie into the project. He was one of the first people we brought into the Heavenly Cream project. And then we said, hey, do you fancy talking to Joe? And he did, and Joe said yes. And then it was just a question of when Joe was going to be in the UK, and he was touring, I believe, and had a day off. And so at that point we arranged, for Ginger to come in on the same day. And we got it, so it was done live in the studio properly, as opposed to we're going to record each string separately and then put it together in Pro Tools. No, I'm kidding. So it was actually done, we did do overdubs along the way, as you do on all recordings usually. You're fixing notes, or you're doing the lead vocal separately, or a guitar solo or whatever. So there were overdubs, but the core all of the songs on the record, the core groups were recorded live in the room. So
the two Joe songs, how long did they take? Sorry to interrupt.
Oh no. No, I mean, Ginger was not in great shape. Like, he had some health problems, but he wanted to come in and do it. And he came in, and but Ginger wasn't going to sit there all afternoon doing, I think we did 2 takes on each song or something, maybe if that, maybe even 1 take for some of them. We did 2 different separate days with Ginger. We did stuff with Nathan James singing on an earlier date, and then the second day was with Joe. But yes, as far as I remember, it was like maybe two takes on each song for Ginger, and then we kind of fixed stuff or redid stuff or whatever. So yeah, it was great. And Joe got his photograph with Ginger, which I think is what he wanted, because he played with my dad and he played with Eric, and I think he he wanted to sort of complete the circle. Played with Ginger, and then he played with all the members of Cream, which is sort of tick that off the list, I guess. I don't know.
Can you imagine having first of all, I mean, I'm pretty sure Joe Bonamassa probably played Crossroads, which Clapton always plays. Even if you don't know the song by name, trust me, you've heard Crossroads. And the fact that he had played with Jack Bruce, Malcolm's father, and now Ginger Baker were playing with this iconic rock band. Joe Bonamassa gets a chance to have played or probably taken pictures with each one of them, the band, and I don't say this lightly. The fact that whether you're oh look, you can see my bed. That's not right. Our bed, Shani and I. but Cream really put it together. And I was, I have to admit, a little ignorant towards Cream when I was in high school. First, I hated the name. I remember going, "Well, what the hell's going on?" But then I found out, and remember, I was 14 years old in '74, and hearing that. First of all, in '74, as a 14-year-old, I didn't know who Jack Bruce was. I knew who Ginger Baker was because I was a drummer, and I really hadn't taken the drums very seriously, but I was drumming at the time, so I would have had to be living under a rock to not know who Ginger Baker is. And everyone knew Clapton was at '74, of course, because he had done so much even by then. But Jack Bruce, I didn't know who Jack Bruce was then. And I used to think the lead singer of all the songs on Cream, because it's to me sounded like Clapton, were basically Clapton, but of course it wasn't. Jack Bruce sang a lot on in the band Cream. So we lost Jack Bruce, as I mentioned, in 2014. He was 71 years old. Ginger Baker died in 2019 at 80. Eric Clapton is the only one left. And there is this tribute album, and we'll get back to Malcolm in a second, called Heavenly Cream. And Malcolm is touring this. If you look up Malcolm Bruce on Google, and there's a link to it anyway in the description, you'll find more information on the tour and a lot of information on the album, which is called Heavenly Cream. Now, the title of this video, how long did it take us to get there? 16 minutes. Oops, sorry. I don't like doing this. I was just watching a video today of someone who was talking about Elizabeth Montgomery, Bewitched. And I watched half of the video and I remember going, they haven't talked about what the big thing was that happened to her. So I gave up. Hope you didn't give up on this video. Ginger Baker, as spoken by a man who knew him a lot throughout his life, Jack Bruce's son, Malcolm Bruce, and well, quoting the headline, anyway, take a listen.
I just talked to Stuart Copeland maybe 2 days ago, I think it was, and he looked. He says, Ginger played that kit back there, and I said, what was it like with meeting him? He says, well, everyone asks me if he hit me, and because that documentary, that famous.
I know. I hung out with the guy that made that documentary. Yeah, he's from New York, I think. Yeah, I mean that whole thing's a trip because, as I'm sure you know, like he pretended to be writing an article for Rolling Stone and flew to South Africa and like just kind of blagged his way into Ginger's life. And I guess it's a badge of honor, and it's like Ginger actually liked the guy. That's why he broke his jaw, or whatever. I don't know. But Ginger was like my dad, kind of layered lots of different things depending on where he was at. There was the consistency of inconsistency, I call it, maybe. I spent some times with Ginger where he was just a joy to be with, and then I'd spent some times with him where he was more what he's famed for, the kind of gruff, sort of angry person. But I don't think he was really like that. I think it was a front. I think it was a protective mechanism. And I think that the people that really knew him saw a very, very different side to him. And, his widow, Kudzi, who's really nice, she has, I'm friends with her on Facebook, and she posts pictures with them together sometimes. And it's a different Ginger. It's a guy that's relaxed and smiling, and his drum tech, I know a little bit, who had a very different relationship with Ginger. Like he just like bossed Ginger around and he'd sort of take it, and Abbas Dodu, who's also on the record, it was Ginger's friend, Ghanaian percussionist, who's an amazing musician and a lovely guy. And they've all got different versions. They've all got different stories about who Ginger was. And then there was this front of like, and maybe it's just like he didn't really feel comfortable in social situations. I don't know. Or he could but he was very intuitive. I think he could sense if people were trying to get something out of him instead of just being themselves. And I think maybe he respected you more if you're just, I'm going to be myself. I don't care if you're Ginger Baker. And it's like, oh, okay, then. Well, I'll just be myself then as well. Or if people approach you, oh, you're Ginger Baker, then he'd be like, yeah, well, screw you, So I think there was all those dynamics going on. He could sniff out a lack of authenticity, and I think my dad was a little bit like that as well. It was quite an intuitive way of being, but also maybe partly about survival and also about being a musician, because when you're performing, when you're improvising in music, you can't be sycophantic. You know, you have to be an equal. You have to stand up on your own 2 feet, and you have to be counted. And so, you know, all of those parallels are in there somewhere, probably, possibly. I don't know. I might just be making it all up. I have no idea. But I mean, Ginger was great. I mean, what an amazing artist, you know, and I think that's all that really matters ultimately.
I think he's using a Shure SM7B microphone, which is a at least $600 microphone, and I've been trying to get one of those. I've been trying to get one of those babies up on this in this studio. We've got an Electro Voice a microphone downstairs in our maid studio, which is a microphone that a lot of radio stations use. But for podcasting, the Shure SM7B is like the thing. It's the microphone that will give you a fat sound, a fatter. Notice that Malcolm has a nice fat sound when he talks. And someone was saying the other day, he says, well, you know, I donated to your channel and I'm just kind of curious, what do you want to buy? Because we have a PayPal link on our channel. And I said to him, a Shure SM7B, that's what we want. We want that microphone in our studio so we never distort. It's the greatest microphone for podcasting at that price. It's not a Neumann. When I got into radio, we had Neumanns. We had these beautiful Neumann microphones at 96 K-Light in Edmonton. If the name Pete Brown comes up during this clip, we'll be back up tomorrow night with more. It basically is because Pete was, if you know Cream, one of the lyricists for that band. And Pete Brown has a chance on Heavenly Cream, this tribute album done by Jack Bruce's son Malcolm, has a chance to sing, rightfully so, on this project, and quite a bit, as a matter of fact. So that's a little tidbit. We mentioned Bernie Marsden a while ago, who, of course, is from Whitesnake, and wrote and is a great performer as well. This is another clip of Bernie. We've got 2 more clips for you, and then we'll come back tomorrow night and talk more about Jack Bruce. I mean, when you get Malcolm Bruce talking about his dad, you really start getting into the idiosyncratic things about the difference between a father and son, how he was upbringing. Did Jack Bruce, he even mentions it, did Jack Bruce, his father, leave him money? Because everyone thinks he's rich because he's Jack Bruce's son. Talk about Bernie Marsden with Malcolm Bruce and the album Heavenly Cream on Rock History Music.
Let's talk about some of the songs. Like right off the bat, I Feel Free. Great opening, nice vocal arrangement. I love that. Tell me about putting that one together.
Yeah, I mean, I love that song because it's kind of it stands on its own in the whole Cream repertoire in a sense. You know, it's like it's showing, I don't know whether you call it Motown or like it's different kinds of influences. And I know that my dad loved James Jamerson and all of those guys that were kind of around a little before Cream success. I guess Cream was 1966, and then a little before that or around, I suppose they were contemporaries, and it was just a different thing. It was like songwriting, it was soulful, and it had a jazz element. So that's a really interesting song, but then also it's kind of got compositional development elements to it. You know, the second bridge is a reharmonization. You don't hear that often in pop music. You know, it's got some really interesting things about that song. And so, yeah, I mean, it's a fun one to do for sure.
Sometimes I'm caught off guard. I'm going, oh, is it my turn? Do I talk? And, you know, I've been in radio 41 years. And in the old days, and I've said this many times, so bear with me. In the old days, I was in radio back in 83 when I first got into radio. I was 23 years old. Went to radio school for a year, just thought I knew everything. We'd have our board here, of course. We'd have usually 2 reel-to-reels on this side. And on this side, we'd have our turntables back in the days when you really had to pay attention. We'll get back to Malcolm in a second. We had 3 turntables. The first one, second one, you used those back and forth. And you had a third one in the back just in case all hell broke loose with the first 2. Or you got lazy, or you went to the bathroom and you could run and just turn on that third turntable. And every few hours, you'd have to check to make sure it was queued up, because if you hit it, mind you, these turntables were on very, very heavy shelves, and it took a lot to unseat them. So that was the days. Mark Burchett, thank you for your donation. He says for your Shure microphone. Yeah, we're trying to raise money for the SM7B Shure microphone, which is the microphone I've been told, because yesterday we put out a thing and I was literally distorting with this microphone here that I'm using, which is just a Yeti Blue. It's a good little microphone. But for the amount of recording we do, it just wasn't right. So, Mark Burchett, thank you so much. If you ever want to donate to the channel, because we are trying to raise money to get this Shure SM7B, which a lot of podcasters use. When we go back, you'll see that Malcolm Bruce is actually using one. He's using the bigger one, which has the preamp with it, but that's what he's using when he's doing his recording. And isn't Malcolm a cool guy? But anyway, if you ever want to donate, there's a link, a PayPal link at the very top of every one of our videos. To PayPal, you can join our Patreon, get early access to our videos, and so on and so forth. Now, the last question, and tomorrow night's more on Jack Bruce, the guitarist for the bass player and vocalist for the band Cream. As I said a while ago, it's interesting to listen to the son of a musical champion who is just his dad. I mean, really. I remember hearing an interview with Lily Collins, who's Phil Collins' daughter. And they asked, they were asking, ooh, your dad's Phil Collins. She says, he's my dad. To me, I mean, I'm proud of him. But Lily was saying, and Lily was a pretty big actress at the time. She said, I don't know. I don't look at him that way. But I can separate it a little bit and say, look, my dad's done all these cool things. My dad has a cool job. And a lot of people know who he is. But to Lily Collins, Phil Collins was just her dad. That's not always that way. Talking to Malcolm, and you'll get a bigger sense of it tomorrow night. And I will come on earlier tomorrow. That he really gets it. And on top of that, Malcolm is a musician. He's also a bass player. He's a multi-instrumentalist. But he has his own band where they do perform this Heavenly Cream album, which he just put out. And by the way, if you want to pick that up, there is a link at the very top of the description where you can write to Malcolm. He's such a forthright guy. And we have a lot more to this interview. And then we'll post a whole interview on probably Friday or Saturday. And you'll get a chance to hear him talk about all the songs. He's a very spiritual cat. Very spiritual cat. So you'll hear him talk about some of that stuff. But this is, we talk about new music, AI, and I'll come back on and read some of your comments. And Malcolm Bruce, the son of Jack Bruce of Cream fame on Rock History Music.
Malcolm, you still have the hunger for new music? I don't get excited going into a record store like I used to. But and as much as Spotify has screwed a lot of musicians, I discover new people all the time. I'm still hungry for new music. How is that for you?
I go through phases because I'm a writer. I kind of protect that process because I'm searching for an internal dynamic within the creative process. So it's right. Challenging. Although I'm a student of music history, so I'll go through phases where, okay, right, I'm going to have to listen to what's going on now because I'm feeling a bit out of touch. But essentially, I'm looking back across the whole of recorded music history. Recorded meaning I'll look at the Western classical tradition, which is recorded by notation. That's a different form of recording, but it's still just as valid, sometimes more valid in a way, because you're getting much more into the nuts and bolts of it. So, I'm constantly studying, and I play classical repertoire on the piano and study jazz and all kinds of things. So I'm listening to not just what's going on now, but the whole thing, because I think that's where the insight comes from, putting things into context across the span of history. But yes, I do go through phases sometimes. And as you say, the consumer end of discovering stuff has changed. I mean, yeah, you can just talk to your iPad, play me something that sounds a little bit like, or whatever, and then it'll just do it, and we're just at the beginning of AI, and we don't even really know where that's going to take us, because again, what we're now seeing AI be able to, okay, you could just say, okay, record press, release, market an infinite number of Beethoven symphonies, and then in sort of 10 nanoseconds it does it. And so will that be good? They probably sound just as good as any other Beethoven symphony because it'll just analyze the whole thing. Or in a popular music context, write me 64,000 Jimi Hendrix albums in the style of Wild Thing, and then it'll just do it. And it'll synthesize Jimmy's voice, it'll analyze his guitar, and so we're getting to that stage. What is creativity? And with a market that's completely has the potential to be completely oversaturated with just an infinite amount of objects that can come at you in experience, how do you delineate between those things? What is creativity in that context? And how do you filter? Before it was, the head of a record label, and it still is, head of a record label that may or may not have an openness to innovation, or may be looking for everything to sound more or less the same because they know that they can sell it. And you still have that. You have a kind of conservative perspective on music. And otherwise, that's jazz, or that's experiment, or that's progressive. It's just such a strange time, because I'm sure like there's incredible music coming out all the time, but what becomes visible in the mainstream isn't always the incredible stuff. It's what somebody perceives, and I don't think it's the public. I think it's somebody else is perceiving as what is commercial, and then if you step outside of the little commercial thing, then it's not commercial anymore. It's jazz. That's not commercial. How do you expect us to sell that in Idaho? And it's like, yeah, but you're putting the people down, man. Like, I think that people spiritually, culturally are craving things that don't put them into this narrow box, because that's the reflection on culture. Then we all end up thinking the same. Oh, you've got to believe in, if you don't like Biden, you've got to like Trump, or if you don't like hip hop, you've got to like rock, or it's like we everything is like divide and conquer, whereas actually there's a transcendent part of ourselves that is unified, that doesn't exist on these polarities, and that's a much healthier place to be, and it's a much more realistic place to be. Let's just be open to not having an opinion about anything. Let's actually start from a place of humility and openness, and we might actually start learning something. And the thing that we'll learn is we don't know anything, because there isn't anything to know. There's just love, but then in the context of late capitalist thinking, I don't know how that would work, and I'm not saying it should be communist or socialist. What I mean is, like, these are the huge questions and the fundamental questions that we're all confronted with, whether we're aware of it or not. And when we look at it in the context of creativity, it's the same thing. Who gets to say what is being said? Who gets to choose? Because everybody's creative. I don't want to talk myself out of a job, because I've worked my whole life to have a voice as a creative person. So I want to be heard too. But how do you do that? Do you pay your way? It's like payola. It's become like payola. Whoever's got the biggest checkbook gets the most visibility, but the opposite of that is like this completely democratic, like Spotify, for better or worse. It sort of is like you can just switch it on, and there's 600 million artists to choose from, but I suppose there's also an algorithm that's going in somewhere that means that you're going to be pushed more in the direction of whoever's putting the most money behind something and cut a deal. Oh, I've got a meeting with the VP at Spotify. Yeah, we're going to talk about how we're going to market your record, and it's like, so, I mean, this is where we're at, and I guess in the 80s we had the guys in Compton and similar, come through because they had something to say, and it was like, whoa, this is coming from a place of vitality. This is coming from a place of oppression. And it has to be said, but it's very, very quickly co-opted into the establishment, very, very quickly became, in the same way that, punk was, there was a very vital moment that punk emerged. It was a necessity of it emerging. And very quickly now, it's nothing to do. It was all actually, when it came down to it, was about selling clothes in West London, So so I don't know. It's just, sorry to kind of go too deep, but
No.
it's just an interesting. We're at this crossroads. We really are at this crossroads, culturally, spiritually. We are unconscious of the forces that are pushing humanity forward or pulling them back, dividing them, submerging them, making them, manipulating them, whether it's a conscious form of manipulation from the deep state or whether it's just self-perpetuating through ignorance. And but we have so much infinite potential, and we can switch it on like a light, but we have to change. And we're seeing that in the world. We're seeing the energies shift, like what's happening in Israel right now, and it's like, whoa. And everyone on social media is taking sides, but there are no sides to this kind of situation. Everyone's got a story, and it's awful. It's tragedy. And many Israelis don't want this to be happening, but they feel compelled for survival. And then the other side have got their stories and their narratives. And so at some point, with all of these things, and with creativity too, it's like somehow we have to find the resolution, but still have
this clip went on for another 15 minutes. I just realized. So we were kind of veering off of music a little bit. If you want to get the entire version of that, we will release it coming up, like I said, on Friday or the weekend. Friday is kind of the weekend. So he's an interesting cat. He's a well-read dude, very spiritual man. Has done. We were talking about TM, transcendental meditation. We were talking about Buddhism, which we were both delved in a little bit, quite a bit in some parts of our life. Paramahansa Yogananda, and just a religion in general. And it was a great chat. It was at the end of the chat. It was a long chat that I wanted to stay on Zoom and talk to him a little bit more. Let me just get to some of your comments. Mark Bichette says, I hope I don't live to see a day AI replaces human voices with warmth and emotion. I think you will, unfortunately. Like I was saying while the video was playing, ChatGPT with, I forget the name of their new thing. It's the one that's circulating where it shows so many people looking incredibly real. Say, hey, show me the Old West from an angle of 100 feet in the air, and all of a sudden you see the Old West. You go, wow, this is weird. Where everyone can create anything. There are some problems with it, but I don't think people can stop AI anymore. It's a train. And as I said in the comments, ChatGPT's people basically said they have a version, and correct me, whatever it is. They have this version, but they have a few versions already finished, and they can't release it to the world because they feel that it might be too much for the world. I mean, we're veering off here a little bit, but AI is coming, and it's not going to be stopped. And it's just one of those things. It's a scary thing. Will it change my life? Probably. People ask me all the time, I'm 64. Will I be retiring next year? No, I'm not. But the only difference is Shannon's coming on with me, and Shannon's almost 11 years younger than me, and she's got a lot more energy than me, and she's editing videos. She's doing Richie Henman right now. She just finished Dave Henman. These are the two of the four original members of April Wine. We've got Jim Henman, we just interviewed, who's the third guy. Miles Goodwin just died. So these guys were, the Henman brothers at least, were on the first three albums. Jim Henman, the bass player, was on the first one. Anyway, I say this because they're all retired, but they're just hanging out, enjoying their time, and we're doing our thing. But to work at the level we're working for, I don't know how long, because it takes as you can imagine, the cream intro video that I put together, which was I think 5-6 minutes, right? That took 6 hours to put together, but it was fun. I enjoy doing that kind of thing. But excuse me, you're researching, doubling your research, tripling your research, and making sure you get content that's that ambiguous content that who owns it we don't know. It's a show that was canceled a long time ago, so it's a strange thing doing YouTube videos. So that's kind of where we're at. We're at 40 minutes, and I went over. Shannon has to give our daughter Danica a bath tonight, our 25-year-old autistic wonder, and I have to look after the dogs. So thank you so much for everyone who came on and listened to Malcolm Bruce, the son of Jack Bruce. The new album is Heavenly Cream, which is he with the help of Ginger Baker before Ginger died, and guitarist Joe Bonamassa, and a whole bunch of other people. Even the Pete Brown, who's the lyricist, one of the lyricists for Cream, sings on this album. If you want to get more information on it, there's a link to Malcolm Bruce's website at the very top of the description. And so thank you. And thank you. We had a super chat tonight we had a few, but I had a few before I came on. Mark Richette, thank you so much for your donation. We're trying to raise funds for our Shure SM7B microphone, which we really need to up our game with our microphones. So it's nice when people donate. If you ever want to donate to the channel, help to the cause, there is a PayPal link at the very top of the description of every one of our videos. And I know sooner or later we're going to get this great microphone, which is the Shure SM7B. So thanks for everyone. Join our Patreon. You'll get early access to all our videos, and subscribe to the channel. Share this video where you think it's appropriate. Facebook groups and things like that. But like our video and comment on them as well. I'm John Bowden. This is Rock History Music. I love you guys. Take good care of yourself.